All right. Hi, everybody. This is Boss Battles Battle Reaction, the show where we have a guest and break down some of the plays that happened in our previous episode. So today I have with me Steve Boshear, creators of Archonia, whose episode we loosely based this battle on. Steve, thanks so much for coming here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Okay. So, I was telling my friend Rob, my co-host, that like initially this started out as like, the idea was like, based on one of your episodes of your first season of Shadows of Archonia. And then it kind of turned into inspired by as the interpretation got like looser and looser. And so
I did notice that.
Yeah. In the end, you'll notice, right? So the bad guys are named after your cast members and yourself, and some of them were from the battle. And I think the biggest thing I took from your battle was this mystery of what the bad guys were saying to the players, and that was never kind of revealed, at least in the episode that I saw. They're saying Archon, Ra, Zalios, and that to me was the core of this episode, and I just kind of left it for a question mark for my players. Like they never understood what it meant. It meant something violent, though. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I think in the case of your crew running it, there's even an extra element of a sinister layer to that doesn't translate, because Zalios is the name of the sort of Jekyll and Hyde type alter ego of one of the player characters.
Right.
So the other two, and even himself, they don't know why are these weird monsters saying one of our names.
Okay. Right. So that didn't translate, and again, that's another reason why it was like inspired by. Okay. Yeah. So we're gonna take our first clip is. There's one of the players casts an illusion, and I always, have problems adjudicating illusions. Anyway, we're going to talk about that after the clip. So let's go to the clip, and then we'll regroup.
Okay, I will move a little bit forward, and as I approach, I'm gonna say, Zelios Argun Woe, and I cast Minor Illusion above the water in the center, and make the image of a beautiful pie above the water.
Okay. How big is it?
I would say 4 feet wide. So because I think Minor Illusion is, I believe, 5 feet max. I would say like a 4 feet large pie in the middle of the water above it.
So that was the setup. It's an illusion. They're casting, minor illusion. And I never know how to adjudicate these things well. And one of the reasons I was excited to have you on is that you play so many different gaming systems, and so maybe different systems handle it a different way. I don't know. Any thoughts right off the bat?
Well, I don't know that it's necessarily a question of system. Obviously, the first thing I do in something like this, and I pulled it up over here because it's been so long since I've played D&D. I pulled up Minor Illusion over here. It should work. It's a 4 foot pie. He made a pie, no problem. But then the next question is, this spell doesn't include any language about this illusion forcing the creature to do anything. So my first question is going to be, suppose he fully believes there's a 4 foot pie in the middle of the water. So what? Yeah, right. What's he going to do? It doesn't do anything.
Yeah. That was kind of, I guess, ultimately how I sided with it. Is that like, what's intrinsically attractive to a troglodyte about a pie? Maybe he's like repulsive. Maybe it'd be like if it was a garbage pie, he'd be into it. But
right.
But there's also a lot of effort. Like I got to swim out into the water to get the garbage pie. Yeah. Right. So along those lines, so and it makes sense. It kind of makes sense. We're in agreement that like the troglodyte wouldn't really be like super focused on this pie. At the same time, you kind of want to somehow reward player decisions, or maybe not. Maybe you're just like, that's not going to work. I'm always torn between that decision too. Like, I don't want to shut players down, but don't want to give them too much.
Yeah, and I think it depends on the player. I always think from that mindset, like I said, of what well, two things. What would this actually do to the creature? But also, like yourself, I try to look for what was the player trying to do, and it's not that uncommon for me to look at what the player's goal was and maybe suggest another route to get to that course of action. If this player's goal was the troglodytes are going to see the pie and want it and go for the pie, I might suggest another spell that would have that effect. I say, hey, do you have this one? Because that might do it. If this player was casting a cantrip in battle, I'm going to assume that they're pretty low level, and probably they don't have a spell like that. But I try not to stonewall players just to stonewall them, depending on how long they've played with me. If I feel like this person should know this shouldn't work, then it's just not going to work.
Right. Yeah. So I'm hearing from you a couple of great suggestions. One, as always, it depends. Two, you may try and like suggest an alternative to the player, which I think is great, especially for players that are learning, which is, by the way, not the case. Like all these guys are really good players, and I think all of them are also DMs as well.
Great role players too.
Oh yeah, well that was what they went for, and they we'll get to it in one of the other clips, but I think they had prepared a lot more stuff just in case, and yeah, it was awesome. Pretty impressive, and I suppose I felt that what they were aiming at with creating the pie, what Simon's character was trying to do, was just like a distraction. Can I make the bad guy lose a turn? And I think, not in this context, but in there's another pie that comes up in our next clip. They're really into pies and popcorn, in that kind of did provide a distraction. I think the other thing I could have done, which I didn't do, which was I could have like put a
draw like the pie, yeah.
Right, at least to remind everybody that it's there, and I think that's also something that I just forget about stuff, right? It's hard to remember there's like an invisible floating pie in the middle, so now it's visible there. Hard to do on VDTs, which is like something we talked about before, like one of the reasons that you do Theater of the Mind. Hard
for
to
our
represent
remote games,
things. Yeah.
And we have used VTTs on occasion. It's just, for our remote games, we're always setting up in a hurry, and sometimes we just don't put the time in for that. But if I can go back for a second to the distraction element, if I had asked a player, what's your point in doing this? And he said, just a distraction. That's not a distraction. Isn't quite the same as the monster changes focus and goes for the pie. It may just be like he's distracted for a second, and I would think, maybe that is reasonable. This pie appears out of nowhere. He doesn't know why, but it's distracting, and I might give the player some kind of check to see, or maybe give the monster a save to see if he gets disadvantage on his attack or something, because just imposing some sort of debuff because of just hey, look over there. It's right. It's not crazy.
Not crazy. Yeah. And that's a good point too, is that you can give them a save or something. Okay. I think we talked pies or at least this pie to death. Let's go back to our next clip.
Okay. So the sounds that they were making before.
Yeah.
And Ra.
Yeah. Alan was saying Ra and Carolyn was saying Archoon, Ra, and they still seem to be saying that.
Okay.
As you're contemplating things.
Oh, okay.
Joshua appears, and he says, okay. Zelios?
So, Archoon, Ra, Zelios?
Archoon, Ra, Zelios. They react to this. They look at you. Archon Rosalios. They say it in succession. None of them are saying all words, but they're going Archon Rosalios.
And I will say Puffalopagus, and I'll summon my backup dancers. So that will be mirror image.
He's playing a dance part. Okay. All right. So you cast mirror image. We got the 3 mirror images up there. Are you doing anything else on your turn?
I am. I'm going to. Is it an action to take some rations out of my bag?
Or... no, you can take something out of your bag.
Okay. I brought a pie. Everybody likes pie.
Sure. Another pie.
I have an apple pie, and I will 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this was Archoon or whatever?
This is the one that was saying Archoon, yes.
All right. So my backup dancers are around us. We have pie. I'm going to set an apple pie near them and say, Archoon like pie?
Okay. Everybody likes pie. Go ahead and make a persuasion check. I give him a check.
Okay. It's a low roll, 27.
Nice. Okay. So Carolyn looks distracted by the pie, runs over to it, and she says, Archoon, and starts eating some pie.
Is she also chained?
She is, yeah. Okay. Anything else for your turn?
Well, I imagine I can't do anything else.
Yeah, right. You've done a lot.
Does it have a collar, a lock? What does it have on it? Just so I know what I see.
Yeah, you don't see a lock. You just see a chain. You see a kind of a manacle almost surrounding the neck and with a chain to it, but you don't see where it can be broken. Okay, so that was some more pie shenanigans, but I didn't put it in because of the pie. I think it was mostly because that turn took a long time, and I think that I guess in the end, just looking at the rules of it, what turned into a legitimate free action, I'm going to take a pie out, I'm going to take something out of my bag, turned into like another action where in the new 2024 rules, they introduced this thing like a utilize action influence action, right? Which I think was meant to in part just stress that if you're going to try and interact with somebody, that takes your turn. And I kind of missed that. But then that whole discussion happened, like that came up in the discussion of some other things I've been seeing online, where it was like specifically Mike Merles, who was one of the 2014 lead designers, was talking about how initially, bonus actions were meant to like curtail doing too much stuff on your turn, and now they've turned into this way of doing a lot. So I guess the question is, are other RPGs you're playing, are they doing a better job of this? And then I suppose like Pathfinder goes the other way, right? Where you've got lots of stuff you can do.
Yeah.
And I guess it just depends on the table. I don't know. How do you handle it if somebody's like pushing the boundaries of what they're able to do?
Well, I haven't given a ton of thought as to why, but since we're discussing it, I feel like I have not seen this kind of behavior as much since we moved away from D&D at our table. And I think it probably is the sort of impulse of a player a lot of the time to cram as much stuff into their turn as they can, and maybe more so if they know it's going to be a while before they get another turn. And so while I can't think of a game that addresses directly this behavior of I want to do more stuff than the rules allow me to, there are a lot of games that cut down how long your turn takes. For example, Into the Odd, or I think Crown and Skull also, you don't roll an attack roll. If you're going to attack, you just hit, roll damage. You're done. And some games do a more simple version of actually, you mentioned Pathfinder, which Pathfinder is every bit as complex as D&D in many ways.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but one thing that I think is simpler about it is there isn't this distinction between action and bonus action. You get 3 actions, and everything you do takes a number of actions. And I feel like that cuts down on the cognitive load on the player of thinking about, am I allowed to do this? Sometimes you can do a spell as a bonus action. Sometimes you can do 2 spells and sometimes you can't. Like, I haven't looked at the 2024 rules, so I'm not sure if they fixed that part of it. But I feel like anything you can do to cut down on the cognitive load and the number of dice rolls is going to make a turn go faster. Now, all of that said, when this did used to happen, I don't know that I ever had a good solution for it. I am not above saying to a player, "Hey, you've done a lot." Most of my players, like the fellow in your clip, Puffalophagus, he's aware he did a lot. He's like, "Nah, come on, I've been going for a while." And a good player is going to be aware when he's pushing it and step back to make room for the other people. And that's really the solution to most problems, is just having good people at your table.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is my favorite clip for a couple of reasons. One, it's just fun to hear all of my friends' names in there as NPC names.
Right.
You're like, Carolyn, Joshua. I'm like, but the other reason is the backup dancers bit. I loved it because you clarified that he's like a dance bard, but I already knew that just because he summoned backup dancers as his mirror image. Right. I was like, that tells me everything I need to know about his character right away. So I love that kind of creativity. I'm a big fan of taking the rules and bending them in another way. I feel like that is what the game encourages us to do. And a lot of people choose not to, which is fine. But, for example, in Shadows of Archonia 1, one thing I like to talk about is that we had pretty much every player character was doing the narrative archetype of a class that wasn't the class they were playing. We had a druid who was functionally a cleric. We had a barbarian who was functionally a paladin. We had a sorcerer who was functionally a warlock. In terms of the narrative and where they got their powers and why they were doing it. So I love minor illusion as backup dancers. That's great.
Yeah. James did went all in. Okay. All right, here we go. Oh, right. We just cast jump on somebody.
That's on Dr. Bond for 1 minute.
That's your bonus action. Okay. What else are you doing?
That's my bonus action. And then I will tell to the Arconian and Boshear.
Right. You're the bad guy.
Hey.
Always.
Do you know how you recognize a good corn joke? It just pops. And I cast Tasha's Hideous Laughter at 2nd level on both of them.
Okay. So what is the range on Hideous Laughter?
30 feet.
Okay, so Boshear is floating 70 feet above you. So he's out of range.
70 feet. Ooh, I missed that. Sorry. I did not realize 70 feet. Okay.
So, but you can get the Arconian.
Yeah. So, sorry, I did not realize that.
Sure. You can change what you like to do if you want.
Yeah. I will cast Mindsliver on the Arconian.
So the point of this clip was also just some difficulties of VTTs or even if you were doing this with minis is conveying depth and height, and so one, there was a confusion, but then 2, ultimately the spectator Boshear, he could have just like the range for his raise was 90 feet. And so essentially he could have just stayed up there floating around and picking people off with this. He's got like one of his rays does damage even if you save. And ultimately I brought him down so that like there would be a battle. I don't see any other way to have done that if you want it to be a battle. Otherwise creatures can, players can run. I don't know. Any thoughts?
Yeah. First of all, the way you handled the misunderstanding about range is exactly what I would have done. when we played our version of this scenario, we were at a physical table and we have combat risers. I was just checking to make sure the company I bought them from is still around, but it's Axe and Shield, if anyone, not a sponsor, but they do these great little modular plastic risers that you can raise things up.
Right.
So that helps. It doesn't always solve the problem. And of course, it doesn't do anything if you're playing remotely. On a VTT, maybe I would put something in the name tag indicating this is 60 feet up or something.
Right, that's a good idea.
But I probably wouldn't have thought of it in advance. That's hindsight. So yeah, I think if the GM and the players don't have the same physical space in their head, you have to clear that up. Otherwise, it's not fair to the player to try something that's not going to work that his character wouldn't have done because he could see it.
Right.
So that part's great. In terms of flying creatures versus players on the ground, one element of that is if you want it to be a fight, either limit the ranged attack of the creature so that he has to land to fight, or make sure the players have ranged attacks of their own. A lot of the time, some of the players will and others won't. So then it's like 1v1 instead of the whole party versus the monster. Or you can just have the monster leave, which is what a lot of flying creatures would do.
Right.
Yeah. But it's an age-old problem. There are multiple solutions to it, and which one is correct depends on the situation. The narrative. Would this creature stay in the air and try to pick them off? Because then it becomes maybe the party has to be the ones that run away.
Right.
And if you don't want any of that, make it land. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. I guess it's an invitation for the players to do something, right? To goad on the to role play to get that guy down there. But
Sure.
If they don't do that, you kind of have to. Well, you have to decide either you bring the monster closer in, or you call it a day and let the party live to fight another day, which
right.
You can't really do in this situation. I mean, like, there's so many things that are like artificial about how I'm running these sessions, right? That it's it's a battle, which is in a way misses out on the real fun of an RPG. That you have so much choice, and you have to fight the bad guy.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, roll to hit. Let's see if you hit me first.
Yeah. Total of a 9. For his first attack,
I don't think that's going to do
second
it.
one. And the second one is not much better, 10. All right, so you don't even have to save. So he's in here somewhere.
At first I was afraid, almost petrified. I thought you'd actually hit me and that I might cry. But then I saw you swing wide left, and I saw you swing wide right. And I grew strong, because I saw, honey, you can't fight, I'm standing here, right in your face. Big Top come to find you, come to put you in your place. You should have stayed on that chain.
Arcoon, he says, Ra, Zalios. That was like some pretty impressive role playing, and James, who's playing Pavlopagus, I think he prepared multiple songs, like for different instances, and just it came up and used this one, it was great. So I think watching it again now, really entertained, and in asking the different players who I play with to rate this episode, that got really they got super high marks for role playing. There was one person, like I was saying before, who it kind of like, they had this inner nervousness or uncomfortableness with how that role play went. Not that it was bad. It was just like, oh man, it was just this moment of like super vulnerability, maybe that struck with somebody.
Sure.
So I guess the question is here, how to negotiate with different types of players when you get different levels of role play.
Well, that's interesting. We have had some players at our table that are very heavily into role play. And of course, role play doesn't always mean speaking in character. Role play can mean
right.
making decisions from the perspective of your character. We had a couple of players in campaign 1 who were very, very different in terms of their approach. One was always thinking combat, tactics, strategy, and another never broke character at all. He doesn't do voices, but he also never does anything at the table that his character wouldn't do. And so, in fact, when we had a bit of a casting change between our first and second campaigns, we had 2 players swapped out. And I mentioned that about this guy. I said, because I met you at a gaming table, it was actually years before I realized that wasn't your real personality. Wow. And the new guy was like, I'm so glad you said that, because that saves me a lot of time. But yeah, I think there's an inherent awkwardness with somebody singing for a long period of time with no music and no accompaniment.
Right.
If this were a show that you were editing for people to watch, you might go back and put a music track under that, cut to the other players' reactions, because they were having positive reactions. They were dancing with it.
Oh, for sure.
Secondhand embarrassment is a thing. It hits everyone differently. You said of the people that saw this clip, only one person expressed that.
Yeah, I think it's a minority that are going to react that way, for sure.
Yeah. Look, what we do is embarrassing. We do math and play pretend for fun in our free time.
Yeah.
And we got gray in our beards. So it's like, if someone is going to get cringy about it, all right.
Right. Oh yeah. I guess there's nothing to do. I'm trying to think in my own home campaigns, the different levels of role play. I think because I'm playing mostly with people of my own generation, where we started D&D when none of that was there. Like there's not a lot of role play. I'm probably doing the most role play, and I don't know if they're cringing, they're not telling me. So and they're still showing up to the table. So I guess that's a good sign.
Yeah. And I cringe at myself. When I was in high school, I used to do a lot of performing classes, and I wasn't a drama kid, but I was in speech and debate, and I could do a lot of voices. And I physically am still capable of doing a lot of those voices, but I just never think to do it. I don't have that instinct to put on a voice when I play a character. And I go back and watch my episodes, and I see often my players get confused which character I'm doing if I just start talking. And it's I have to tell them.
Yeah.
But it's like you said, everyone has different comfort levels. And if one person is doing something that bothers the group, it's like, well, how much is it bothering? Like, if that song had gone on maybe another verse, I would have said, like, all right, chill. But
I don't think it was that. It was that at all. I think it was just that it was it was such a big role play that one person was like, oh my gosh, Anyway, I loved it. James, please, if you're watching this, keep role playing. Okay.
It indicates that you're engaging with the narrative, and that's good.
Oh yeah. Right. Welcome to Archonia, everybody. And you find yourselves at the cusp of a large well, and the waters ripple in front of you. And standing before you are 2 figures that you don't recognize. One introduced himself as Hogar, and the other one, Hogar, introduces as Throck. And Throck so far has only said his name, Throck. So Hogar goes, well, I see you've all found the rings. That's great. My name's Hogar. You might remember me from such episodes as A Cold Drink of Water and Whisper Me Green. So we're in Archonia here, and this is Throck. Throck has given us some intelligence about a great evil here at the cusp of this well, and he would take care of it himself, except that, and now Hogar kind of like turns to you guys and winks at you. His clan is coming, and they're going to make him their leader, Throck, and that means that you're going to have to stay inside and do all kinds of administrative stuff. And Throck looks scared at this prospect, and he goes, Throck. Throck, wishes you good luck, but he leaves shortly after being introduced.
Heavy is the head that wears the crown, Throck.
So that was from the beginning of the episode, and I included it just partially as an introduction and into. I really like the character Throck. And I remember that anecdote that was one of the things that like had motivated him to do something, was like the threat of administrative duties if his clan was going to make him their leader.
Yeah, you pretty much nailed that character.
I just put that as an intro so you can talk about Archonia. You've done like a massive amount of work, right? Like there was 100 3 to 4 hour episodes, and that was like season 1. And now there's even more. I don't know what do you most love about Archonia? What keeps you there? I don't know. Just tell us.
Sure. What I love most about Archonia is Throck. But aside from that, Throck is now an NPC in campaign 2. But so my inspiration for it initially was old time sword and sorcery stories, such as Conan or Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser. And if you watch especially some of the earlier campaign 1 episodes, you'll see me heavily emphasizing how all magic and supernatural forces in this world are sort of lumped together as being dark and evil, and normal people don't do that. We are told in the D&D source books that adventurers are like the 1%, like most people are way less powerful than this. And I really emphasized that a lot. I also emphasize the idea that it's a mostly humans only world in terms of the civilization. Monsters exist, but if you want to walk around town, you got to be a person. You got to be a human,
right?
And of course, every one of my players built a non-human character, which is great, because that was something we got to work with. There were a couple of races that I put off limits, specifically the elves, because I really wanted this sort of dark, gritty tone to the world, and I feel like elves are the antithesis of that. They're like nature and beauty and dancing to the music of the dewdrops, and it's just like, let's get rid of them.
Right. I would do that too. Right.
Yeah. Narratively, spoilers, it turned out to be the same campaign world that we'd been playing in off camera for many years. And that's something I revealed to the players in episode 27. So I wanted them to have a grounding in what the tone of the game was first, and then reveal, hey, all that stuff, it's still valid. It's just, 1 million years ago. 2 million, actually. But what I love about it these days is where we've taken it. Campaign 1 went cosmic level to the extent that the whole multiverse collapsed to a single room, and then the victory of the player characters was, once it got down to that room, it started growing back. And it grew back different. And so now we are in another age of the world. We have changed game systems, as I've referenced a couple of times. We're now playing in Kevin Crawford's Worlds Without Number. But we also have some side campaigns set in Archonia where we're playing even different systems. We are using Merkborg for a setting called 100 Years Black, which is a different time and place in Archonia. We have Midlight City Operators, where we're using cities without number. We did a Godless campaign. A Shadow of the Demon Lord has a supplement called Godless, which is kind of Mad Max in D&D. And we used that for one of our campaigns. And we justify all these changes in rules and how magic works and everything with all these cosmic changes that are happening to the universe. And what I like about it is it gives us, first of all, just something that's ours, something that we made. And I think a lot of GMs can relate to that. Sometimes, depending on the type of person you are, it's easier to use your own creation than Forgotten Realms or something, because it's like, what if you get the lore wrong? Well, I made the lore. So that there's that. But the other thing is, it gives us sort of a baseline understanding of what the world is, and then we can look for these systems that highlight aspects of it that we want. Merkborg highlights that, high mortality, gritty, low power player character thing that if I'd had Merkborg at the start, it might have always been a Merkborg game. And Dungeon Crawl Classics is another one that we haven't used yet in a campaign, but I would love to do DCC and Archonia, because it's another one that's low power, arbitrary character deaths, dice rolls decide almost everything. And I love that. Shadow of the Demon Lord, very dark and edgy, not quite as low powered as these other systems, but like I said, we can highlight different types of storytelling in the same universe. And that's the main thing. One thing I tell my friends when they GM one of these Archonia side campaigns is, in order for it to still be recognizably Archonia, it needs the Ermin, which is what Throck is, and it needs a Broxiel, which is a big NPC, cosmic level NPC that we have. I said, anything else you can change.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess, so one of the things that I've heard since you played so many systems, these ones that are high fatality, harder to run a long campaign, right? Because the characters die.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Which, and I remember how the your season 1 opened, which was a strong starting point with like this. Throck is like the, last or almost last survivor in this like epic battle. Right. And so he was, I don't know. So do you think that Throck was lucky or talented or both? Maybe it's both.
In that first episode, a little of both. Well, in the backstory of it,
right,
where he survived the battle, a little of both. None of the other Ermin are player character level, but he was level 1. So, and
right.
In the course of that session, he was lucky to have a GM that wanted to make sure the character survived one session, because almost inadvertently, without thinking through the consequences of it, I should say, it introduced this piece of lore that Ermin are psychologically incapable of retreat. And Joshua played it to the hilt, even when I surrounded them with thousands of zombies. And it was just like, in addition to that, I had started this story with a battle just finishing up. So I had given him half his max hit points to start with. And I was like, I cannot have you guys getting in a fight right now. I cannot narratively justify all these zombies not turning on you if you hit one of them, but Throck's gonna hit one. But we got through it. We figured it out. After that, he became super dice lucky. There's a T-shirt you can buy in our merch store that it's hieroglyphic, but it's his insight check. Because very early on in our campaign, Throck had to do an insight check on one of the other PCs who was a changeling to try and figure out what he was seeing,
Right.
And of course I gave him disadvantage, and he already has like -2 on the wisdom. And he double nat 20'd it.
Oh man. Wow. Yeah, that's like, huge. Okay.
Yeah, you fully understand everything. And that kept happening to him. He also kept nat 20ing on the death saving throws throughout the campaign.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
One thing I did in that campaign to kind of keep it gritty is I do death saving throws for my players behind the screen, so that not only does the group not know, but even the player dying doesn't know if they're dying. Wow,
if they're right. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that because I feel like I don't want the other characters to know, to game the system of I don't have to run over and save him right now. He's got another round, So I would do it behind the screen, and I would just tell them if they were alive or dead when I knew. And but because of that, I knew for sure Throck was rolling nat 20s because I was rolling them for him.
Right. So there's no doubt about it.
Yeah, there's a famous battle, famous for us, where they were fighting a dragon. And every time the dragon got a turn, Throck went down. And every time Throck got a turn, he nat 20 to death save and stood back up. And the whole fight, when that was happening, it happened like 3 times.
That's I get a player like that in here. I want to see his dice. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. All right. Steve, thanks so much for joining us. It was a real pleasure to have you on. I kind of feel like you're one of my neighbors or like an older brother in that, like I guess I came across your stuff. We're both fans of the Dungeon Dudes. We both post stuff to their plugs and promos thing. And you really inspired me because like you're just so prolific. And I really do kind of look to your stuff and am continually impressed. So thanks again for being here.
Well, thanks for having me. Appreciate the kind words. It's a lot of fun to see someone else's take on a scenario I came up with years ago.
Right. Yeah. Very loosely based.